Okay, so have you ever had one of those conversations that just felt like pulling teeth? Like you're trying to get a vending machine to make small talk.
Oh, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. You put in all this effort, and all you get back is silence.
Yeah, it's like trying to build a fire, but only one person brought the wood.
Exactly. A good conversation needs fuel from both sides, you know?
And that's what we're diving into today. Practical strategies to keep those conversational fires burning bright.
Especially for those of you learning English as a second language.
So many people struggle with conversations. But it's not that they lack the ability. It's that they haven't learned the specific skills.
Yeah, it's like assuming you're just bad at riding a bike because you haven't practiced.
So it's not about being a natural. It's about having a toolbox of techniques.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest things that trips people up, especially when they're learning a new language, is this thing called the filtering effect.
Okay, filtering effect. What is that?
It's when you overthink every single thing before you say it. And we're so worried about making a mistake or sounding awkward that we end up putting on the conversational brakes.
It's like having a million tabs open on your phone. Everything just freezes up.
That's a great analogy. And, you mentioned English learners. This is especially true when you're trying to express yourself in a language that's not your native tongue.
Well, yeah, because you're already juggling grammar rules, vocabulary pronunciation.
Right.
It's a lot to think about.
It's like trying to cook a gourmet meal while you're simultaneously learning how to use the oven.
No wonder it feels so overwhelming.
Exactly. That's where this filtering effect kicks in. You become so focused on avoiding mistakes that you just end up censoring yourself.
And that kind of stifles the natural flow of a conversation.
Exactly. So what's the first step to having a smoother conversation?
I guess loosen up a little.
Loosen up. Embrace spontaneity. Think back to when you were a kid.
Oh, yeah.
Kids haven't developed that self-consciousness that makes us as adults overthink.
It's true.
Ugh.
My niece will explain her entire imaginary world of unicorns with zero hesitation.
Exactly. They're not worried about sounding smart or impressive. They're just expressing themselves authentically.
And that's really the key to a good conversation.
Yes.
But as adults, how do we unlearn that bad habit of overthinking?
Well, we don't have to go back to finger painting and nap time, but we can borrow a page from their book.
Okay.
Start by practicing speaking freely in low-pressure situations.
Okay, so chat with friends, family. Talk to yourself out loud.
Whatever you need to do to get comfortable with that flow of speaking without obsessing over every word.
Here's a challenge for our listeners. Try speaking for 30 seconds straight without pausing.
Ooh, I like that.
No topic is off limits. Just let the words come out.
Yeah, a verbal sprint.
Exactly.
Break through those mental barriers.
And speaking of being less self-conscious, can we talk about the pratfall effect?
Oh, the pratfall effect.
That seems like a superpower for English learners.
Yeah, the pratfall effect basically states that making small mistakes can actually make you more likable.
Yeah, because it makes you seem more human, right? Like you're not some perfect polished robot.
Right.
You're a real person who's willing to laugh at themselves.
Exactly. Think about when a stand-up comedian flubs a line or trips on stage.
Everyone laughs along with them.
Exactly. It creates a sense of connection.
And for English learners, this is so valuable because they're already putting themselves out there trying to communicate in a language that's not their first language.
Yeah, and most native English speakers are going to appreciate the effort that you're putting in.
Rather than judging for every little error.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about removing the filter and we've talked about embracing the pratfall.
Uh-huh.
What's the next tool in our conversational toolkit?
Keeping that momentum going, and it's called threading.
Threading.
Okay.
I like it. Paint me a picture.
So imagine someone says, I went to Italy last summer. Instead of just saying, oh, that's cool, and kind of letting the conversation die,
Right.
threading is about pulling on those details
So
to expand the conversation.
it's like creating a choose-your-own-adventure story.
Exactly. So you could ask, what was your favorite part? What food did you try? What surprised you the most about Italy?
I love it.
Each one of those is a thread that can lead to a whole new conversation path.
And it shows that you're actually listening, not just waiting for your turn to talk.
Exactly.
You know, I remember this one time someone mentioned they played guitar. And I know absolutely nothing about playing guitar. But I used threading. And I asked, what made you want to learn? And we ended up having this amazing conversation about his musical journey,
I bet.
his favorite bands. It never would have happened if I'd just let that conversation drop.
That's the beauty of threading. It transforms a simple statement into a web of interconnected ideas.
It's like you're building a spider web of conversation.
You got it.
So it's not about having all the answers. It's about asking the right questions.
Exactly. And the more you practice threading, the more you're going to start to see those conversational threads everywhere.
It's like developing a spider sense for interesting conversation topics.
There you go. Be curious, be observant, and always look for those sparks that can ignite a truly engaging conversation. You know, it's fascinating how so much of communication goes beyond just the words themselves.
Oh, yeah.
Our nonverbal cues play a huge role in how smoothly a conversation flows.
It's like there's this whole other language happening beneath the surface.
Absolutely. So, for English learners, this is a whole other layer to think about.
Does it mean there's even more to learn?
It's not about adding more to your plate.
Okay.
But it's about understanding those nuances. Some of these nonverbal cues are universal.
Okay.
But others can be very specific to English-speaking cultures.
So for someone who wants to avoid those awkward silences and keep a conversation moving, what are some nonverbal things to keep in mind?
Well, let's start with eye contact.
Oh, yeah. Eye contact's a big one.
In many English-speaking cultures, maintaining good eye contact shows that you're engaged and you're respectful.
But there's a sweet spot, right?
There is a sweet spot. You don't want to stare somebody down like you're in a Wild West showdown.
Right. You don't want to make them uncomfortable.
Exactly. But looking away too much can seem like you're not interested.
So what's the right balance?
It's about connecting visually, showing that person you're present. You're listening to what they have to say.
Oh, okay.
Imagine holding their gaze for a few seconds, then naturally glancing away before you reconnect.
So it's more like a dance than a staring contest.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What about smiling?
Oh, smiley's a good one. I feel like that's pretty universal.
A genuine smile goes a long way in any language.
Mm-hmm.
In English-speaking cultures, it's often seen as a sign of openness and approachability.
Okay, so let that natural warmth shine through.
Exactly. Okay, so we've talked about eye contact, smiling.
What else?
Your overall body language.
Body language.
Your posture, your gestures, even the way you're positioned relative to the person you're speaking with.
So slouching on the couch like I'm watching TV, probably not the best look.
Probably not the best way to project engagement.
Okay.
But you don't have to stand at attention like a soldier either. Think about leaning slightly forward, keeping your arms uncrossed.
Okay.
These all signal that you're open and receptive.
So I'm relaxed, but I'm attentive. Like I'm actually interested in what this other person has to say.
Exactly.
Are there any hand gestures or movements that I should be aware of?
Well, there's this really interesting technique called mirroring.
Mirroring? What is that?
It's about subtly reflecting the other person's body language.
Okay.
To create a sense of rapport.
So if they lean in, I lean in. If they cross their legs, I cross my legs.
Isn't
A
it?
little creepy.
Not when it's done subtly. You're not mimicking their every move.
Okay.
But mirroring a few key gestures can create a subconscious connection.
So it's not like if they take a sip of their coffee, I immediately order another latte.
No. That's taking it a bit too far.
Okay.
The idea is to create a sense of harmony, not to become a copycat.
Okay. I'm starting to see how these nonverbal cues can really make a difference. It's like this whole secret language that can help you connect with people on a deeper level.
Exactly. And for English learners, this is so valuable.
Yeah.
Because it can help to bridge those cultural gaps and build rapport, even if you're still working on your fluency.
Okay, so we've got removing the filter, embracing the pratfall threading, and now we've added nonverbals. Is there anything else we can put in our conversational arsenal?
Well, one tool that's often overlooked is the art of asking engaging questions.
Okay, we already talked about asking open-ended questions for threading.
Right.
Are there other types of questions that we can use?
Think about questions that go beyond just those typical yes or no answers.
Okay.
Questions that invite deeper thought, personal reflection, or even storytelling.
So instead of do you like to travel, it's what's the most memorable trip you've ever taken and why?
Exactly. You're prompting them to share more of themselves.
Right.
Which naturally leads to a more engaging conversation.
Yeah.
How and why questions are really powerful for this.
So how did that make you feel? Or why was that experience so important to you?
Precisely. And for English learners, these types of questions are great practice for using descriptive language and expanding your vocabulary.
It's like turning every conversation into a mini language lesson.
Yes.
Without it feeling like homework.
Exactly.
We get to learn, connect, and have a more interesting conversation all at the same time.
That's the goal. And let's not forget the power of humor.
Oh, humor is a great one.
A well-placed joke, a funny observation, can lighten the mood, create a more relaxed atmosphere.
Humor is a universal language.
It is.
even if you're still learning the vocabulary?
Exactly. Are there any cultural differences that English learners should be aware of when it comes to humor?
That's a good question.
Humor can be subjective, so it's always good to be mindful of your audience. What one person finds hilarious, another might find offensive.
Right.
But don't let that stop you from injecting a little humor into your conversations.
So don't be afraid to crack a joke, share a funny story, or even laugh at yourself.
A little self-deprecation can go a long way.
Yeah, it shows you don't take yourself too seriously. Makes the conversation more relaxed.
Right.
Okay, so we've covered nonverbals, asking engaging questions, and adding a touch of humor.
Yeah.
Anything else we should keep in mind as we continue this deep dive into smooth conversations? We've talked about a lot of great strategies to help English learners have smoother, more engaging conversations. But what about that feeling of anxiety? You know, the one that can creep in when you're about to speak English in a real-life situation?
Oh, yeah, that dreaded performance anxiety. It can make even the most well-prepared English learner feel like they've suddenly forgotten everything they know.
Like your brain's saying, I got this,
Yeah.
and your mouth is like, nope, we're out. So how do we overcome that fear and actually enjoy speaking English without feeling like we're about to take a pop quiz?
Well, first, it's important to remember that feeling nervous is totally normal.
Okay.
In fact, it's a sign that you care, that you're pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone.
So it's not about eliminating the nerves altogether. It's about learning how to manage them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Think of those nerves as energy, excitement that you can channel into a positive experience.
I like that.
And there are some practical techniques that can really help.
Like what?
Deep breathing exercises are incredibly effective.
So just taking a few deep breaths when you feel those butterflies in your stomach.
Precisely, because when we're anxious, our breathing tends to get really shallow and rapid.
Right.
Deep, slow breaths can help to calm your nervous system
Okay.
and bring you back to the present moment.
It's like hitting the reset button on your anxiety. What about other techniques? Are there any mental tricks we can use to boost our confidence?
Visualization is a really powerful tool.
Right.
So before a conversation,
Okay.
close your eyes and just imagine yourself speaking English fluently, confidently, with ease. See yourself smiling, engaging with others, and having a great time.
So it's like creating this mental movie where you're the star showing off your amazing English skills.
Exactly. And remember, our thoughts shape our reality.
Yeah.
So by focusing on those positive outcomes, you actually increase your chances of experiencing them.
It's like giving yourself a pep talk. But instead of words, it's images and feelings.
Exactly. And speaking of pep talks, don't underestimate the power of positive self-talk.
Oh, yeah.
So instead of those negative thoughts like, I'm gonna mess up,
Right.
replace them with affirmations. I can do this. I'm proud of myself for trying.
It's like having your own personal hype squad cheering you on in your mind.
Exactly. And the more you practice these positive affirmations, the more you start to believe them. Then that belief translates into greater confidence and fluency.
Okay, I'm loving these techniques. But even with the best preparation, mistakes are going to happen. How do we handle those moments without letting them completely derail us?
Well, remember the pratfall effect we talked about earlier?
Oh, yeah?
Mistakes are not the enemy.
Right.
In fact, they can actually make you more relatable.
Okay.
The key is to not dwell on them. Acknowledge the mistake, maybe even laugh it off,
Yeah.
and then move on.
So just like, oops, my bad. Let's try that again.
Exactly. And remember, even native English speakers make mistakes all the time.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's part of being human. So be kind to yourself, embrace those imperfections, and just focus on the progress you're making.
It's like learning to dance. You're going to step on some toes along the way.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
And just like with dancing, the more you practice, the smoother those moves become.
So for all of you English learners out there, keep practicing, keep learning, and most importantly, keep believing in yourselves.
Because the world is waiting to hear your unique voice.
And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into smooth conversations for English learners. We've explored a whole toolbox of strategies, from removing that filter and embracing the pratfall to mastering your nonverbals and asking engaging questions.
We've also talked about managing that anxiety, the power of positive self-talk, and remembering that mistakes are just part of the process.
But most importantly, we want to emphasize that communication is about connection.
Yeah.
It's about sharing your thoughts, your ideas, your experiences with the world.
So go out there, practice those new skills, and don't be afraid to stumble along the way.
Because every conversation, every interaction is a step closer to fluency. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep those conversations flowing.